The Uskoks were irregular soldiers in Venetian and Habsburg Dalmatia that inhabited areas on the eastern Adriatic coast and surrounding territories. During the Ottoman wars in Europe, etymologically, the word uskoci itself means the ones who jumped in Serbian and Croatian language. Bands of Uskoks fought a guerrilla war against the Ottomans, and they formed small units and rowed swift boats. Since the Uskoks were checked on land and were rarely paid their annual subsidy, they resorted to acts of piracy. The exploits of the Uskoks contributed to a renewal of war between Venice and the Ottoman Empire. An extremely curious picture of contemporary manners is presented by the Venetian agents, whose reports on this war resemble a nightly chronicle of the Middle Ages. These chronicles contain information pertaining to single combats, tournaments and other chivalrous adventures. Many of these troops served abroad. At the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, for example, a Dalmatian squadron assisted the Allied fleets of Spain, Venice, Austria and the Papal States to crush the Ottoman navy. After a series of incidents that escalated into the Uskok War, the Uskok activity in the stronghold of Say mostly ceased. History. Early period. The Ottoman conquest of Bosnia and Herzegovina during the early years of the 16th century drove large numbers of Croats from their homes, which in the town of Klis prompted the formation of the Uskok military. Large numbers of Serb and Croat fugitives from Bosnia and Serbia fleeing the Ottomans joined the ranks of the Uskok bands. In 1522 the border territory of Say was taken over by the Habsburgs under the authority of Archduke Ferdinand, forming a state-controlled militärgrenz, or military frontier. The Austrian Emperor Ferdinand I instituted a system of planting colonies of defenders along the military frontier. Moreover, the Uskoks were promised an annual subsidy in return for the services. Owing to its location, Klis fortress was an important defensive position which stands on the route by which the Ottomans could penetrate the mountain barrier separating the coastal lowlands from around Split in Croatia. From Ottoman-held Bosnia, numerous refugees from Ottoman areas began settling along this territory, crossing the border to escape Ottoman attacks. Christian guerrilla resistance in Ottoman-occupied areas of Dalmatia and Bosnia caused these people to flee and settle down, first at the fortress of Klis along the military frontier, then at Say. A body of these Uskoks, led by Croatian captain Peter Kršić, used the base at Klis both to hold the Turks at bay, and to engage in marauding and piracy against coastal shipping. Although nominally accepting the sovereignty of the Habsburg Emperor Ferdinand I, who obtained the Croatian crown in 1527, Kršić and his freebooting Uskoks were a law unto themselves. After Peter Kršić's death, and the lack of water supply, the defenders of Klis finally surrendered to the Ottomans in exchange for the freedom. On March 12, 1537, the town and fortress was given up to the Ottomans. Many of the citizens left the town while the Uskoks went to the city of Say on the Croatian coast, where they continued fighting the Ottomans. They may have started to gather around Say as early as 1520. The Ottoman raids and destruction brought Say natives together with those from the Habsburg lands, Dalmatians, Ragusans and Italians. At Say, the Klis Uskoks were soon joined by other refugees from Novi Vinodolski in northwestern Croatia, from Otočak on the Gaka River, and from other Croatian towns and villages. The new Uskok stronghold, screened by mountains and forests, was unassailable by cavalry or artillery. However, the fortress was admirably suitable to the lightly armed Uskoks, who were excellent in guerrilla warfare. The martilosi were employed by the Ottomans to discourage Uskok penetration of Turkish territory, which was not very profitable anyhow. Since the Uskoks were checked on land and were rarely paid their annual subsidy, they resorted to acts of piracy. Large galleys could not anchor in the Bay of Se, which is shallow and exposed to sudden gales. So, the Uskoks fitted out a fleet of swift boats, which were light enough to navigate the smallest creeks and inlets of the shores of Illyria. Moreover, these boats were helpful in providing the Uskoks a temporary landing on shore. With these they were able to attack numerous commercial areas on the Adriatic. The Uskoks saw the ranks swell as outlaws from all nations joined them. Eventually, the whole city of Se lived from piracy. The expeditions were blessed in the local church, and the monasteries of the Dominicans and the Franciscans received tenths from the loot. After the War of the Holy League in 1537 against the Ottoman Empire, a truce between Venice and the Ottomans was created in 1539. This led to the evacuation of all Uskoks in Dalmatia in 1541, where they had been defending a Christian enclave in the mountains during the war. Throughout the following years the Habsburgs were at arms with the Turks, giving the Uskoks the opportunity to repeatedly raid Bosnia and Dalmatia. The Uskoks were able to continue doing so up until 1547, when peace was established between the two, forcing the Uskoks to find other ways of making ends meet. As with other Slavic pirates, the Uskok territory was not suitable for any form of agriculture, forcing them to turn to piracy once more. Ottoman invasion and Venice beginning as inland pirates. The Uskoci shortly turned to the seas, once realizing the full potential of the geography of Se. The land was protected by thick forests and mountains, while the jagged cliffs near the seas prevented warships from entering. The seas in the Gulf of Quernero were quite rough, which posed navigational hazards as further protection from their enemies. Uskoks began their attacks upon Turkish ships with boats large enough to hold 30 to 50 men. After 1540, however, Venice, as mistress of the seas, guaranteed the safety of Ottoman merchant vessels, and provided them with an escort of galleys. The Uskoks retaliated by ravaging the Venetian islands of Krk, Rab and Pag. Moreover, they utilized the Venetian territories in Dalmatia as a springboard in order to launch attacks against the Ottomans. After 1561, the Uskoci attacked Christian shipping in Dubrovnik with numbers never exceeding 2,000 men. By 1573, the Uskoks caused considerable concern in Venice with frequent attacks once Venetian attempts of protection had proven to be ineffective. The following years led the reputation of the Uskoks to spread, becoming the resort of refugees and outlaws of all kinds from all nations. Meanwhile, the corsairs of Greece and North Africa were free to raid the unprotected southern shores of Italy. Venice was besieged with complaints from the Porte, the Vatican, and the Viceroy of Naples with his sovereign, the King of Spain. A Venetian appeal to Austria for help met with little success, and the offences of the Uskoks against the Venetians were outweighed by their attacks against the Ottomans. Minucci, a Venetian envoy at Graz, states that a share of the Uskok spoils of silk, velvet and jewels went to the ladies of the Archducal Court of Graz, where important matters between Venice and Austria were negotiated. From 1577 onwards, Venice endeavored to crush the pirates without offending Austria, enlisting Albanians in place of their Dalmatian crews, who feared reprisals at home. For a time the Uskoks only ventured forth at night, during the winter season and even during stormy weather. In 1592, a strong Ottoman army invaded Croatia hoping to capture Se. Led by Teli Hasan Pasha, the Beyliği of Bosnia, the Ottomans managed to capture a number of Uskok settlements, killing and enslaving the population. However, the army was routed and dispersed in the following year. Austria was involved in war with the Ottomans, and the Venetian admiral Giovanni Bembo blockaded Trieste and Rijeka, where the pirates forwarded the booty for sale. They also erected 2 forts to command the passages from sea to the open sea. A raid by the Uskoks upon Istria resulted in an agreement between Venice and Austria, and Count Joseph de Ribata was appointed to act as commissioner to those in sea as well as the chief negotiator with the Venetians. Ribata came to sea in 1600 with a strong bodyguard detail, and was very energetic. His time ruling over the Uskoks was brutal, where many Uskoks were hung or sent to fight in the Turkish War. Revealing his favor towards the Venetian side, he soon lost all military support, giving the Uskoks the opportunity to overthrow his rule, and was ultimately killed in January 1602, enabling Say to return to its usual state, with the fugitive Uskoks returning to Say, where they resumed their acts of piracy. Up until 1611 the Uskoks were relatively undisturbed. Piracy was strictly forbidden at this point, but it was tolerated in order to avoid payment of subsidies owed to those of Say. A Venetian squadron intercepted an Uskok fleet in the spring of 1613 in response to the complaints regarding Uskok activity, and, as reported, 60 Uskoks were beheaded, with the heads then displayed in St. Mark's Square. In response to this offense, the Uskok captured a galley of Venetians, slaughtered the crew, and used the blood of the victims to flavor the bread. The Uskoks would conduct such acts up until 1615, when the piracy went so far as creating an open war between Venice and Austria. Venice, frustrated with the piracy, launched an attack after the Archduke Ferdinand of Styria refused to reprimand the Uskoks. A peace treaty was signed in autumn 1617 which arranged for the Uskoks to be disbanded, as well as the ships and fortresses be destroyed. An agreement between the Habsburgs and Venetians in 1618 expelled the Uskoks from Say, prompting migrations of Uskok families into the hinterland. The Venetians nominated Marco Srdanović new of Omis. Marco was born Srdan Kasic, but the last name was changed to Srdanović. This was because the Ottomans had given an order to kill every Kasic of the Omis pirates. Uskok migrations. The pirates and the families were, accordingly, transported to the interior, where they gave the name to the Uskok and Gebush, a group of mountains on the borders of Carniola now called Zumburak. They were also settled in the nearby White Carniola and Kostel in what is now Slovenia. The presence has also been traced near Aga in Istria, where such significant family names as Novlian, Otocian, and Klasan were noted by Franceschi in 1879. Uskok Code. As a group whose central reason for being brought together was Christianity, the Uskoks' explanation for piracy and warfare rested in the religion. These people felt they were fighting a holy war against the Muslim enemy in defense of the boundaries of Christendom. Seeing that these people were once refugees from Ottoman nations, they were given no choice but to live in order to continue following the religion they had been their entire lives. The Uskok people established a code to follow, holding Say honor and its values in a central place of the code. Honor is what they believed to be the most important quality that a hero could have, which all Uskoks strive to be. Other important aspects of the Uskok heroic honor were loyalty to the city, army, and band, honorable attention to every knight and obligation, readiness to lay down the lives or spill the blood in time of war, experience in warfare, ability to benefit the city, success and glory in duels with the Turks and other enemies of the Christian faith, and severity in punishing those who were disobedient or rebellious. It was also made known the uskok qualities that would cancel out one's honor: reluctance to shed one's own blood, failure to engage the enemy in battle, groundless boasting, avoidance of risks on the frontier, failure to take prisoners, trophies, or booty, meanness in rewards to comrades or spies, the absence of any general recognition of one's manliness, and the lack of battle scars or wounds. For these principles it is clear that the Uskoks admired the strength and arrogance of a hero and despised the weakness displayed by a coward. The importance of these principles was instilled in boys at a young age. Taught to take part in competitions, they would test the strength and dexterity through racing, fighting, and throwing stones at one another until blood ran. Over time, this code would be broken, ignored, and overlooked as the Uskok attitude and motives would change. Legacy. Today, a traditional unit of Uskoks called Kliski Uskoki exists as a ceremonial regiment in honor of the national legacy of Uskoks in Croatia. The unit of KLI's Uskoks composed entirely of Croatian war veterans. After the War for Independence, the former soldiers wanted to revitalize the historical and cultural heritage of KLI's, the town whose bloody history gave much inspiration during the war. The veterans participate in historical and cultural events to renew the memory of the Uskoks of KLI's. They were among the 6 historic Croatian military units represented at the funeral of Ottoman and Habsburg in July 2011. Notable Uskoki: Peter Krzic, Ivan Lenkovic, Peter Markonic, Ivo Senjanin, Senjanin Tadia, Barjo Puljanin. Names in other languages: German, Uskoken; Italian, Uskoki; Slovene, Uskoki; Hungarian, Uskokok. Bibliography.